Did you know that family scapegoating abuse can happen in any type of dysfunctional family system, not just a narcissistic one? Well, it can. And I've already offered some videos talking about dysfunctional family scapegoating, where the family projective identification process is driving the scapegoating abuse. But sometimes the scapegoating is being driven by a narcissistic family power holder. And that's what I'll be talking about today in Beyond Family Scapegoating Abuse. So stick around. Welcome to my channel. I'm Rebecca Mandeville, licensed psychotherapist, certified clinical trauma professional, and family systems researcher. And I coined the term family scapegoating abuse, or FSA, as a result of researching for many years on family scapegoating, the scapegoat child or scapegoat adult child in a dysfunctional or narcissistic family system. So people from dysfunctional family systems who don't relate at all to discussions of having a narcissistic parent or sibling are always expressing to me that they're both surprised and grateful to learn that they indeed can be scapegoated in a family where there's not obvious narcissism. And so my book has been very helpful for them. My book, Rejected, Shamed, and Blamed. And it's also can be helpful if you grew up in a family that has a narcissist dynamic, a family member with strong narcissistic traits, because we know that people with strong narcissism or actual narcissistic personality disorder were themselves traumatized as children. That's something we've known in the psychoanalytical field for many, many years. So we have a very traumatized person with narcissistic traits, maybe full-blown narcissistic personality disorder or NPD. And we need to bear in mind that they experienced intra-psychic splitting themselves from their own childhood trauma. And the splitting is significant, it is severe, and this can fuel some very significant and severe abuse of children growing up in such homes, including family scapegoating abuse. It's important to remember that the ego by nature is narcissistic. It wants what it wants when it wants it. And it's concerned with its own security, with its own survival needs, and with its own existence. So we all have narcissistic personality traits to some degree. So I always encourage people to think of narcissism on a continuum. And when we get farther down that narcissistic continuum, we get, say, to the end of it, we're going to be at what's referred to in the diagnostic statistical manual that we use here to diagnose in the United States, or the DSM. We're going to get narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. Yes, if you grew up in a narcissistic family system, of course, you have suffered from narcissistic abuse, but not every child in that family will have suffered also from family scapegoating abuse. And I always say to clients, where it becomes clear through my assessment that they had narcissistic family members that contributed or even created and drove the scapegoating, that they really got a double whammy. And that's not to say that someone from a dysfunctional family had less pain or less injury from being scapegoated, but coupling narcissistic abuse with family scapegoating abuse, to be honest, is where I see some of the most severe abuse occurring and the most severe consequences for that targeted child or adult child. So if we're going to talk about narcissistic family dynamics, narcissistic family systems, we need to really understand the features and traits of a narcissistic family. So I'm not going to read all the features that we would find in the diagnostic statistical manual on what would qualify as narcissistic personality disorder if you have 5 or more of these traits that's listed in the DSM. And I'm sure a lot of you are very savvy already and know these traits: grandiosity, needing excessive admiration, lacks empathy, shows arrogant, haughty behavior and attitudes, et cetera, et cetera. You can Google it. It'll come right up. Features of NPD or narcissistic personality disorder. What I'm concerned with in this video is to help you understand the narcissistic family system, because whether someone's formally diagnosed with NPD or not, a parent or family member, a sibling having strong narcissistic traits will put you in a narcissistic family system. To understand the narcissistic family system, you need to understand that the parent or primary caregiver is not interested in being a loving, concerned parent that puts the needs of the child ahead of their own. In fact, you'll get quite the opposite. The narcissistic parent expects, even demands, that their partner, their spouse, their children reveres them, admires them, adores them, and is compliant and conducts themselves in a way that's pleasing to the narcissistic parent. And I'm sure that all of you have heard of the golden child, scapegoat child, this split I talk about in highly traumatized family systems. This includes the narcissistic family system. These are split systems. If you think of the family as a psyche, it's like a big earthquake fissure going through that energetic family ground. And so there will typically be, it can shift. It's like musical chairs. A child can be a golden child one year or one day and the scapegoat the next. There's no rhyme or reason to it, but there usually is a golden child and a scapegoat child. Well, why is that? Remember, the child is there to reflect the parent. So the child that is most exalting the parent, most pleasing in regard to how the parent feels they're being reflected through this child, that will be the golden child. The scapegoat child will be the child that the narcissistic parent has projected their own disowned parts onto, the parts of themselves they cannot acknowledge, tolerate, or expect. So that scapegoat child is actually a human movie screen, a projection screen, and the parent's not seeing the child. There's no I-thou empathic bond or relationship. The parent is seeing their disowned parts, the parts of themselves they can't even admit they have, that they don't like, the toxic shame and all of their repressed trauma. So this gets translated into this bad child, and the golden child is the good child. And this can even happen with physical appearance. I had a client who was a quarter Native American. The father was half Native American, and he had disowned his Native American heritage, and he greatly favored the child that was blonde and didn't look at all Native American. And my client, who looks very Native American, was cast in that scapegoat role, and frankly, their life was a living HELL. When a parent is a malignant narcissist, this is something Sam Vaknin, who wrote, I think he actually created the term narcissistic abuse, and he was the first, I believe, to discuss malignant narcissism. He's here on YouTube and has a lot of books out you can find. And this is really true. Family members are nothing more than dehumanized objects. Those are my words, but dehumanized objects who are used to prop up the narcissist, the narcissistic parent's false persona. So think about that. And that's how I conceptualize it. The child is an object to prop up, to be used to prop up the narcissistic parent's false persona. The term used in malignant narcissism is supply. Family members are supply, just a source of energy, kind of like being a vampire, sucking out the life energy of their family members, of their children, so that they can puff up more and more and more in their belief that they are special and exceptional, and the rest of the family's chopped liver. The people that will be most favored in such a family will be, often it will be a codependent spouse who toes the line and agrees and reflects this false persona to the family narcissist. And the golden child will also do okay. But in the end, everyone in the family is suffering from this narcissistic presentation. I can't emphasize enough the perils of living with a malignant narcissist, which are too long to list in this short video, but I'll quote you from an article I wrote about narcissistic family abuse. Family members exist only to serve the intra-psychic needs of the narcissist, which are twisted, endless, and primitive in nature. Primitive because the seeds of narcissism are planted in early childhood, which arrests the healthy development of the psyche. In this same article, which I'll link you to in the video description and in the pinned comment, I discuss narcissistic family as cult system. I've talked about this already in some past videos, so you might want to check those out. And trauma bonding is also very important to be aware of if you grew up in a highly narcissistic family system. Trauma bonding is a result of growing up in, really energetically, is what it's like a war zone, and it's full of minefields, and you never know what's going to blow up. But children are programmed to attach, and so they will find ways to try to gain affection and attention from that narcissistic parent, and they're living in a fear-based survival state. And their ability to function and exist resides in the hand of this god in the family, this narcissistic power holder. And similar to Stockholm syndrome, which most of you I'm sure have heard of, this kind of trauma bonding happens between children and their narcissistic parents. And that's frankly why an adult child can come out of this type of home environment and get right into a relationship with an abusive narcissist, because that trauma bonding is repeating itself and playing itself out. That adult child is programmed to attach to a narcissist. In regard to recovering from narcissistic family abuse, that deserves its own video, and I do commit to getting that video out, but it does require an assessment for complex trauma symptoms, because the child grew up in a war zone, so to speak, an energetic war zone. There's maladaptive survival responses that helped you get through but are no longer serving you today as an adult. Those need to be assessed. A lot of psychoeducation needs to be given to such clients, and usually quite a bit of work on complex trauma and what I call family scapegoating trauma. So it's not an easy road. I think some of the greatest hopelessness and despair I see in forums, people that write me comments here on YouTube, social media, people who are really in such despair and don't believe they ever can recover from family scapegoating, abuse, and narcissistic abuse, grew up in a narcissistic family. So it's quite a mess that has to be cleaned up, recovered from, healed from. And as I said, I'll do a dedicated video on that in future. So if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel and you want to see some of these videos, please do consider doing so. And if you can tap the thumbs up and like this video, that lets YouTube know to put it on people's home feeds so other people can hear this message that they may desperately need to receive. See you next time.